Hey everyone. So yeah, we're in for a huge treat. I don't know, Colin, you want to stop the share there? Awesome. Yeah. So yeah, no, thanks for joining everyone. We have a huge treat today. We have Rach McBride, Cody Beals, and Trevor Foley, three of our amazing pro triathletes here for a panel. So I'm going to get right to it. So we'll start with a couple questions. If folks have questions in the chat, please keep them there. Type any questions as ongoing. We'll also have open Q&A towards the end if we have some time. But if I think Colin's going to help monitor for any ongoing questions. But I want to just kind of kick it right off. Thanks for joining, Rach, Cody, Trevor. When we're in Boulder, Vanessa Forrester was there live with us and gave an incredible talk to the athletes in attendance on mental endurance and what that means. But I want to ask each of you three, in terms of mental endurance, what does it mean to believe in yourself, and how do you practice that self-belief in your confidence in training and racing? Not sure if Rach is on. Maybe Rach can kick us off there.
Yeah, sure. I can kick off. I think that so much of how we learn that mental endurance is through training. So I feel like coming through off season when you're not doing workouts that are super painful or really hard, it's more like chill stuff, that getting back into that rhythm of back into those harder workouts, it really feels like I'm kind of having to reboot a bit and get back into that mindset of how hard can I hurt myself today, or how hard can I hurt myself, or how long can I be uncomfortable in these longer, tougher workouts, which of course translates into race day. And I think that for me, that consistency of just you build on all of that training to let it go on race day. And I think through my 13-year career, I'm still learning, and I'm still getting better at being able to endure that sufferfest, I guess.
Great insights. Cody, how about yourself?
So you talk about self-belief, Ed, and for me, mental endurance isn't like unwavering self-belief. I think there's this idea that the ideal athlete or a professional athlete is just confident in themselves all the time. And that's so wrong. I've given up on myself so many times. I've been so fed up with the sport. I've pretended to quit a few times. I've just been in despair. But for me, mental endurance is the ability to find that self-belief again and again and again, because it's going to waver at times. That's a given, I think. And pretending otherwise is not realistic. So for me, it's, being able to rediscover it again and again, as many times as it takes. And I'm still able to find it, thankfully.
Awesome. I love to hear that, redefining that self-belief. Trevor, how about yourself?
Good question. I don't know, probably something I struggle with a lot of nerves and stuff before races, competing against obviously really good people like Cody and stuff. And as I'm standing there on the start line or walking to the swim start, I have this mantra that I've been working with. It's my friend who's kind of a life coach and stuff. And it's the quote of I get to do this. I don't have to do this. So I could catch a plane home right now and not have to do this triathlon, but I'm here because I love it. I love this lifestyle. I love the community. So I honestly just kind of that saying is I get to do this. It's a privilege. I'm healthy. I'm fit, surrounded by my friends and family. So I feel that's just a good thing if you're kind of struggling with something. You get to do it. There's a lot of people that would be super fortunate to be in your position.
Grateful mindset. That's something that Vanessa talked heavily about actually in Boulder. So yeah, that's great to have that alignment. And it actually leads me into my next question, which was, what do you do to prepare yourself mentally race day? Everyone I'm sure feels those butterflies and lining up. I know Trevor, you shared a little bit, but maybe Rach and Cody, what do you do? What are the mental thoughts and kind of preparations that you go through in order to prepare yourself for what is oftentimes a very long day?
Go for it, Cody.
Okay, I think I talked about this in the last Varlo call actually, but I'll reiterate it on every single call like this because it's an approach that really works for me. So I put a lot of energy into creating like a mental library. And for me, that could be power phrases, music, places I've been, people who inspire me and love me. And these are all things I can draw on race day. So I spent all this time in training, like visualizing and building this mental library. And then inevitably during the, many hours of an Ironman, when my mind wanders and I can't be 100% present, I can draw on these snippets of songs or power phrases or people and get energy from that. So that's something I work a lot on in training.
I think for me, I focus on just like recognizing that the feelings in my body that I'm having, like I kind of recognize like, okay, I've got butterflies in my stomach, my like heart's beating a little bit faster. I feel a little bit nauseous, and recognizing that that's actually just my body telling me that I'm excited about something. I'm excited about what I'm about to do. It doesn't mean, because often I tell this story about how when I first started triathlon and I would like show up at start lines and I would just want to turn around and go home. Like I was like, I don't want to do this. I don't want to be here. But then as soon as the gun went off, it was totally fine. And I was great. And it took until one of my fellow competitors was standing next to me at the start line and said something to the same effect of like, gosh, I just want to go back to bed. And I was like, oh, wow, I'm not a freak. I'm not the only one who feels like this way. I was questioning myself in the sport. And so it just really normalized that. And I remember telling this story in a conference actually for surgeons. It was like a high performance conference for physicians. And one of the surgeons was like, I feel like that every time I step into the surgical theater. And it really kind of made me realize how universal some of these feelings are. And so for me, I just take those feelings and like, I just welcome them. I'm like, okay, you're here. I feel you. Just means we're excited. It's normal. I expected this. It's all good. You're okay.
Awesome. I love that mindfulness. Kind of along those same lines, and I know Cody touched upon this, but if anyone has, Trevor or Rach, when you find yourself in the middle of the race, or maybe things may be going south or not going as planned, you kind of find yourself going into a dark place. What do you do to kind of get yourself out of it and keep pushing and continuing forward?
I guess I can talk on that a little bit. I feel like I'm still super new to the sport, so I'm still trying to figure it out myself. But right now, honestly, I'm trying to have fun. Like in the beginning, this is my second season in triathlon, and right when I started my first few, I was having so much fun racing like so many people I look up to and like watch on YouTube. And then I quickly became like infatuated with like results, and it became not fun like very quickly. And I kind of had a few like not bad results, but like I was just struggling and not having fun. And I like kind of like Rachel was saying, I was literally getting to the start line so stressed, like, oh man, I did this and that last race, so I only can get better. Like I have to get better. And it was just like really weighing on me. So I'm really just trying to have fun. Like as kind of cliche as that sounds, it's just like when it gets hard, just I'm having fun. I get to do this, as a job, and I was making fun the priority, if that kind of makes sense, but still definitely a work in progress.
Yeah, I love that idea of like making it fun. I definitely use that as well. Just recognizing the privilege that I have to be out there racing, to be able-bodied and be like a high performance athlete, able to do what I do. I think as well, just from my race experience, I draw a lot on past experiences that where I have like felt terrible and just kind of stuck with it and rallied. I've got one race experience in particular where 70.3, where I was on the bike, I was the defending champion. I was like really feeling terrible on the bike and not where I hoped I was going to be in that moment. I was praying for a flat tire, like some kind of like mechanical to give me an excuse to not race anymore. And I remember getting into T2 and just putting my shoes on and grabbing my stuff and being like, all right, we're just going to go for a run and see what happens. Like, no low expectations, and ended up running myself into second place. And I really, I think about that experience a lot. A similar experience of racing Ironman Frankfurt with food poisoning, which is a terrible idea, but I did it anyway. Because you fly all the way to Germany, and what are you gonna do? You're not gonna not race. So, and I remember like the first majority of the race was terrible until like literally halfway through the marathon. And then all of a sudden, I super rallied and was like able to basically run the last half marathon at like race pace and give myself a Kona qualifying slot. So I really draw on those experiences of like, you never know what's going to happen. It's a moment in time. And I just keep putting one foot in front of the other, or keep pushing the pedals, and you never know what's going to happen.
Cody, if you
Yeah.
share a little bit, I just remember in Lake Placid last year, it was so exciting watching you race there. And I think you're leading, and then Big Mets, I think, passed maybe on the bike, but then you kind of grinded it out and really just kept it going and passed, I think, and took the win late in the race. What kind of things kept you going there and it was a hot day that day in Placid last year. So what kind of things kept you going and kept digging for that win?
So one of the things I always remind myself while I'm racing is a little tidbit that a former coach, David Tilbury Davis, shared with me. And it's really obvious, but he always reminded me, you don't have to feel good to perform well. And that has been so true throughout my career. Like how I feel during the race and during the lead up to the race has almost no correlation with how I've actually performed. I've had some races where I felt god awful and performed near or at my best. And I've had races where I thought I was leading up to a great performance and it's been a flop. So I have to kind of decouple how I feel, my emotions, how my body feels from the performance I know I'm capable of. So most of the day at Placid, I felt like trash and it was mentally in a very bad place, but it's an Ironman. Literally anything can happen. It's why I love the distance. There's big chaos every time in an Ironman, big drama. Big Mets looked like he had the win wrapped up and then cramped and started walking. So this is a given on an Ironman course that things like that are going to happen. It's just kind of a war of attrition sometimes.
Great advice from everyone. We have a pro question here from Ariel. How do you overcome a challenge within a discipline of triathlon that is not your strongest?
I'll take that one to start. So swimming was a big liability for me getting into the sport. I think a lot of people can relate to that. I didn't really have like a real swim background. And I didn't really find success and progress with that until I really made it fun and enjoyable. And for me, that was finding a group to train with. And there was kind of a compromise between what I thought was like my ideal optimal training, which I was doing 100% solo, and a flexible training program that I could do with other people. So these days I'm loving my swimming. I'm swimming 30 to 40,000 meters a week often because I've got this amazing group of athletes in my city I can train with. And half the time I show up at the pool deck without even knowing what the workout is, and I just roll with whatever they're doing. Because now, to be clear, that's not always a great idea to train. Like my entire training program isn't fly by the seat of my pants like that. But for me, progress with the swim, to hit the volume I needed, to hit the intensity I needed, it was important just to make it fun and social. So that solved some of the puzzle for me.
Great thoughts there. Another question I know we had before the call from one of our Team Varlo members was, do you have any tips to help you? Oh, sorry. How do you, I guess, pushing hard on the bike? I know this person just really has had a few races where they were pushing hard on the bike. They actually come from a running background, run sub 3 hour marathons. So a very high caliber runner, but ends up pushing hard on the bike and really struggling on the run. Like, how do you kind of balance those three disciplines in terms of your performance as you're going through a race?
Yeah, I guess I can talk on a little bit as I come from a run background myself, so I'm fairly new to like swimming and biking, and I guess was the question more of how I balance them in the race?
I think during the race, yeah, because feeling,
Yeah.
assuming you've trained well, you've done everything you needed, but during the race, it just the legs just maybe pushing so hard on the bike, maybe the legs just don't have it to get towards that, where the goal they want.
Yeah, something I've struggled with is like I've really tried to work my bike in the last like 2 years of becoming a triathlete, as just there's so much time to be had if you're a good biker and so much time to be lost if you're a poor biker. So I've really like made that my priority. And it's kind of been like at my downfall because I've become a pretty good biker and like I'm known as like a runner. And like if I don't have good legs, kind of like they're explaining on the bike, I kind of get discouraged and kind of move backwards or like throw in the towel. But it's like, man, my best event is like yet to come. Like my race could still prosper and turn into something great. And like sometimes I don't even like give myself the chance, or like I said, I just throw a pity party for myself. So honestly, just like it's hard when you come from a run background. Like it's the last thing of the day, but like, something, you could argue that the run's the most important, right? So just trying to believe in yourself and just kind of like say my race starts like when my feet hit the ground. And that's something I've been trying to tell myself. And some of these bigger races is like, man, just make it to the run and like, have the run background, have the run pedigree. So just like my time will come. So maybe just kind of repeating that. And it's easier said than done because you have, 2, 3, 4, 5 hours sometimes before your time comes, but your time will come. You just need to get there. So, but I definitely know the feeling.
I feel like, yeah, I feel like Cody's going to have some like great insight into this because he has a bit more attention to detail. I don't know if I'm the best to answer this question because I think it depends on the distance. Like for half Ironman, I just kind of, my coach and I have realized that I race really well if I just like swim and bike like a beast, like I don't have to run and then see what happens on the run. So it's like kind of a bit of an experiment every time to see just like how hard I can push myself and where I'm going to fail. With Ironman, I feel like there's a lot more pacing involved. You have to be a bit and that it's like it feels like an experiment to me. It feels like every race is an experiment of like, okay, let's try this and see how it goes. I definitely have had like some of the better marathons when I feel like I have underbiked a little bit and like really taken it easy. But then it's like, well, maybe I could have biked harder and still run that. Like I feel like especially with longer distance races, there's just so many variables and just continuing to race more and get more experience really is helpful.
So yeah, I can relate to this as well. I was also a varsity runner, and it took me so many years to run to my potential off the bike. Like I think I was gearing up for this spectacular run split, and then I would, not crumble, but just feel like I was underperforming. And I realized you have to be really brutally honest with yourself about your fitness and how that translates into a realistic pacing plan. I think especially in Ironman, everyone can look like a hero for the first 4 to 6 hours of the race. That's not the impressive part. So like it takes a lot of discipline though to let people go sometimes, or let what you thought your objectives might be slip away to set yourself up for a good back half of the marathon, which is often what it comes down to in an Ironman at least. So for me, it was a lot of years of checking my ego, being honest about where my fitness was at and what a realistic pacing plan was actually going to be, and then not getting caught up in all the excitement of a race and throwing that pacing plan out the window.
Great insights. Thank you all. Kind of just moving on to more of a recovery focus. I know as pros, you all have just insane training loads, racing. I know Trevor raced back-to-back races in Boulder and Florida, I believe. And Cody, I know you've raced, Mont Tremblant back-to-back with Lake Placid. What do you all do as recovery during both your training and kind of training blocks and race blocks? What do you do to kind of maintain your pliability and recovery rates in order to just achieve these, amazing training loads?
I think for myself is honestly sounds kind of weird, but just kind of trying to get back to somewhat of, you could call it training, but kind of getting back to training as soon as possible. So like even that night, like I go out for like a 30-minute ride just to like flush my legs, and then I'll hop in the pool like early the next day just to start like getting blood flow to my body. I found like if I try to like quote unquote rest like a ton and like take a day or two off, I'll totally like tighten up and get flat and not feel great. So honestly, just doing a lot of active recovery, low heart rate, low RPE stuff, just to keep the legs, bones, joints, everything moving. And honestly, letting my body sleep, like sleep in, not feeling like I need to just wake up, but just sleeping a ton. And then, like I said, a lot of active recovery, low RPE type stuff.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
agree with like the continuing to move, the active recovery. There's nothing better, I feel like, than a easy swim the day after an Ironman. But I've definitely learned, especially in the past 2 years, of like kind of just getting back to it as soon as possible in some ways, like taking some downtime. I want to say that I sleep, but I'm not great at getting a lot of sleep. So I'm still working on that. Because I think that's the most important, to be honest.
I'll give a bit of a counterpoint to these two. I actually like my complete rest days. So I do a little bit of active recovery, but actually very, very little. Like I train relatively low volume, but most of it is, well above zone 1, like zone 2 and up. But for me with recovery, I guess that aspect's just individual. The focus for me with recovery is 100% like on the fundamentals. And I really like to hammer this point because I think there's all these recovery devices and supplements marketed towards athletes. And it can be a distraction from like the bare reality that sleeping, nutrition, and stress management and appropriate training load are always going to be the most important things. So those are like the 4 pillars that I focus on. I don't take any recovery supplements. I think I've got a massage gun, but like I don't really use any devices. I don't use boots. I don't use compression. The literature on a lot of this stuff is, pretty iffy, frankly. So I think if you're nailing the fundamentals, it's okay to put the icing on the cake with some of these things that at the very least aren't going to do any harm. But I think most people with respect to recovery would be best served focusing on sleep, nutrition, stress management, appropriate training load.
Great answer. I mean, I know someone in the chat, Barry, mentioned compression. Cody answered that. I don't know if Trevor or Rach, from your perspective, to use any kind of tools or implements beyond what you mentioned.
Yeah, I use, well, kind of like Rachel said, I like sleep, but I struggle with getting a lot of sleep or going to bed early sometimes. So for whatever reason, so I'd like to sleep more. But as far as like the boots go, I've used Normatec boots since college, and like Cody said, I don't know if they like are the end all be all. I don't know if they're like I don't wake up the next day and I'm like magically fresh, but they don't hurt if I'm like sitting down playing Xbox for an hour or something, like just chilling. So might as well just throw them on. But I wouldn't spend your last $800 on them. There's a lot of other stuff I'd spend $800 on first.
Yeah, I agree. I use Normatec as well. I've got one of the guns. I've got rollers and things that I try and keep my body loose. I do think that there's not any concrete science on all of it, but placebos can be huge. So if you feel like it works, then it works. I used to do ice baths all the time, and I think they're great, but I'm a little bit too lazy to do them now, I think. I've experimented a little bit with actually using the ketone esters, so HVMN ketone esters a little bit especially for like a multi-day race. I tried that last year. I don't know. I raced really well, so I don't know if I don't feel like I'm like super in tune with my body sometimes in that sense of like what helps and what doesn't. Yeah.
It's like great insights. So in terms of your training cycles, and do you all utilize a periodization model in your training, and can you describe your typical kind of cycle, maybe leading up to race season and through race season? How do you go up and down?
Yeah, I can start. I follow like pretty classic periodization, which is block periodization, but I follow it loosely, I would say. So block periodization is the idea that you're going to focus on like one kind of intensity regime or one zone per discipline at a time. And there's a lot of flexibility in that, but broadly, that's how I think about my season. So, and I also follow the classic periodization doctrine of progressing from less to more specific. So for me as an Ironman specialist, that means that coming out of my off season, I'm doing things like hill sprints and 25 meter or yard sprints in the pool, really, really high end stuff. Not exclusively, but that's the focus. And then gradually, as I move towards race season, I'm shifting more and more towards race specific intensities. And it's kind of maybe counterintuitive, but it's really only the last 2 to 3 weeks leading up to a race where I'm actually hitting some workouts focusing on like that Ironman or 70.3 pace or power. So that's an approach that's worked well for me. And then throughout the season, I'll kind of revisit like a condensed version of that build again, where I'll hit a bit of hill sprints at the very beginning and then shift more and more towards race specific intensities, just crunched into a shorter time frame than it would be the first time around over the off season.
Yeah, I follow a similar plan. I don't think my training is super periodized in terms of like three week build and then a 1 week recovery. I feel like my training is pretty consistent throughout like every week leading into races. But I definitely tend to focus more on the shortcut stuff for a bit. And then more race specific stuff in the like couple of weeks leading into a race.
Man, my answer is so much different than theirs. But the last like 6 months, I've been like living and training with Lionel. He's another pro triathlete. A lot of people know, and we like coach each other. Training methods kind of like we just wake up and whatever we feel like we're missing, we kind of just do. Just kind of just work hard. Like if we biked hard the day prior, we'll run hard today. Or it's just kind of it's a very like by feel approach. Like we run hard a few days a week, we bike hard a few days a week, and we swim hard a few days a week. So it's very basic. Like we use very simple numbers like 6x10 or 5x5. Just keep it very simple, which is nice because like, we do a lot of the same workouts just because it's easy for data collection too. Like we always kind of do like a staple of like 6x10 minutes on the bike. So it's like very easy to see. Like at the beginning of the season, we were doing those at 340 and now I'm doing them at like 390. Like it's super easy to do stuff like that. But yeah, and kind of like Cody, I'm a pretty low volume person. So just lower volume, higher intensity, a lot of hard work and just ripping it on race day. So.
Right. We got a question here from Reggie. You all mentioned swim, like run training. How much of your training consists of strength and conditioning, mobility, maybe outside of racing season and inside of racing season?
I've been working with a trainer here in a local group called Restore Human for about 4 or 5 years. That it's more of like a functional movement and mobility kind of regime. So often I am doing a little bit of heavier stuff in the winter and the off season and more like maintenance and just sort of muscle firing and more specific stuff in the summer, but I'm there once a week. So it's like pretty much, every week, aside from when I travel, I'm doing a strength workout.
I've been trying to get more consistent with this, and I feel like that's been a narrative I tell you pretty much my entire career. So I really try and lift a couple times a week over the off season, and then inevitably it seems like I fall off the wagon during race season. And I don't really beat up on myself too much for that. Like, again, I think it's pretty individual. There's not a lot of great research linking strength and conditioning to better performance as a triathlete, like making you faster. But there's definitely a more hand wavy justification you can make for, preventing injury and also just for general well-being, which is something I also care about, to set up a happy life and healthy life after triathlon. So I think there's also some pretty good scientific literature supporting strength and conditioning for aging athletes. And I would even put myself in that camp as a 33-year-old. Like with age, your muscle mass just declines over time. So I would definitely want to be leaning more into my strength and conditioning. And I feel like I could take some inspiration from Rach's playbook there because I'm not the best at it right now.
Yeah, I would like to lift more. As I become more established, I'd like to try to work with like a strength and conditioning coach. I worked with one for 4 years in college and thoroughly believe in it. I think it can really help especially your swimming and biking. But right now, this is pretty simple. I do a lot of banded glute work, which is like a lot of injuries stem from the glute and hip area, and also to stay fast. Like coming from a track background, all your speed from running is generated from your glutes. So having strong glutes is really good, and then a lot of your power on the bike in the TT position is station, like from the glutes if you're set up properly, especially to save the legs for the run. So I try to do a lot of band and glute work. So that's kind of like side steps, monster walks, clams, stuff like that. And again, just power and speed on the bike and the run, and then a good portion of injury prevention.
Sites. I see Saj had a question there. Saj, you want to pose your question?
Yeah. First of all, thanks for being here, you guys. Really do appreciate it. I want to ask, and this is more so for members of the team. We're not pro athletes. You guys are, but I think sometimes we definitely want to get that perspective of what would you tell your younger self, or what would you tell yourself pre-pro life, right? What would be the general advice you'd give yourself about how you take the sport, and also something that members of the team can take in. I know many people are racing this weekend. Many people are racing in the coming weeks. And oftentimes maybe it is that, we take the sport really serious, and sometimes we get down on ourselves. But what is that general advice you'd give members of the team as they have races coming up, but then also that you can relate towards where you were at prior to the pro life?
So I took things like so darn seriously in my early 20s. I was so serious about triathlon, and it was completely at the expense of my enjoyment of the sport. But I thought I could be married to triathlon. And for a while it kind of worked, but it wasn't fun at all. And I was starting to fizzle out, like in a lot of ways. So you got to take it as a given that it takes literally 10 to 20 years of consistent aerobic practice in order to achieve your potential as an athlete. So if that's a goal, to explore your potential in the sport, which it was for me, you have to find a way to make it fun, because that is the only way it's going to be sustainable. I don't care how disciplined people are. No one's going to grind out 10 or 20 miserable years of self-sacrifice and suffering. So make it fun. That'll make it sustainable. That'll help you achieve your potential.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think for me, when I started my career out, I was pretty reckless and was just focusing on go and not focusing on the recovery aspect, and just sort of filling every moment of my time with all of the things. And as a pro there, you have that luxury of being able to get that downtime in between workouts and things. And I suffered through a lot of injury early on in my career. I had stress fractures in my feet pretty much every year for the first 5 years of my career, which really set me back quite a lot. And so for me, it was like learning how important that was and to focus on that. And I'm still working on it. But it's taken time to find the right team as well. But that's kind of what I talk a lot about, having the courage to take time off and having the courage to take the downtime, because you don't need consistency is really the key. You don't need to smash every workout, and just being able to call it or take it easy when you feel super run down can be scary, but necessary.
Yeah, I wish I could talk to my 16-year-old self. Which it wasn't that long ago, but I wish I could talk to him so bad and just say dude, give yourself grace. I went to a private school for running, took running super seriously and lived and breathed it. I went 3 years with never missing a day, and would cry if I missed a day sometimes because it was raining. I was obsessed, and I was oh, I have to be the best. I have to go to college, and ultimately it just burnt me out. I just really didn't like running at the end of my time in college, and actually quit 2 years early, and then found triathlon and really fell in love with triathlon. I'm starting to find my love with triathlon, and kind of like Cody said, he was super obsessed with it. And last year was my first full season in it, and I just found myself at the beginning of this year just taking it too seriously. Last year I was if I was ranked like 40th in the world last year. So 41st this year would be like a failure. Like I only have to go up, and I was like training so hard at the beginning of the year, and it's like, nah, dude, like give yourself grace, like give yourself a chance, like just like kind of going back to what I was saying, having fun. So really trying to take that approach so I don't burn myself out, so I enjoy the sport and just have fun and just not take it as serious. Yeah, so I definitely wish I could talk to my younger self though.
Yeah, can I add to that as well? Like my last year was like one of the best years of my life. And part of that, and I had incredible racing. I was, had 270.3 wins, like just an absolutely incredible year. And the big difference in that year was that I went into my races of like, this is just fun. I don't have expectations. And when I started this year, I was like, you know what, I'm going to keep on with that. Like, I want to channel that again so that I can have even like, maybe this year can be even better. I don't know how I can make it even better, but and I felt myself like slipping back into the old me of like having these high expectations or like being worried about who's going to be there and what the day's going to be like and how my body's going to respond. But when I just go into my races, especially with this feeling of just like, let's just go out there and see what happens and no expectations, still pushing hard, but no expectations. And it just made all the difference in the world in terms of my enjoyment levels.
Great answers and insights. Want to be mindful of everyone's time. So yeah, thank you, Rach, Cody, Trevor, for taking the time to speak to the team members. I know it means a lot to everyone for you to share your insights, and it feels so, one of the great things about what we're so proud about here at Varlo is our pro athletes are just incredible human beings, and all of you really just reflect everything that we hope to stand for, and just the fact that you're here giving your time and really just showing us that you're just humans too, although we all view you as superhumans. But you probably sounds like it's always good to hear that you guys feel the same type of fears and things, and you just able to deal with it well. So thank you all so much. Saj, I don't know if you want to mention anything else to close us out.
Nope. I was gonna just echo what Ed said. Thank you so much for your time, you guys. Really do appreciate it. It means so much. And for everyone who's joining, thank you as well. I think when I get to see everyone's faces and I get to read the names, and most importantly, I get to see the participation, it means so much to all of us. That's Colleen, that's Reggie, that's it's Ed, it's our whole team. But most importantly, it's what it means to each of you guys. When we started this year, one of the things that we said was that empowerment is the cornerstone of our community. And it's not just empowerment to ourselves, but it's empowerment to the person to the left and to the right of you. And I think this is definitely a testament to that. So thank you guys so much for your time today. Thanks for participating. And definitely, if you're racing this weekend, we'll be seeing you at Happy Valley or wherever you're going to be racing. Be safe, be well, good luck. And we'll be cheering you guys on.
Thanks, everyone.